The morning light filtered through the kitchen curtains of the Mitchell home in Millbrook, Indiana, casting long shadows across the breakfast table where Sarah had carefully arranged David's favorite meal: scrambled eggs, wheat toast, and black coffee. At 42, Sarah still maintained the hopeful routine of a devoted wife, even though the man sitting across from her barely acknowledged her presence anymore. "Emma called last night about her college applications," Sarah said, refilling David's coffee cup. "She's excited about the scholarship interview next week." David didn't look up from his phone. His dark hair, now showing threads of grey at the temples, fell across his forehead as he scrolled through messages with the focused intensity he once reserved for her. He murmured, his wedding ring catching the light as his fingers moved across the screen. "I thought maybe we could drive up together to see her," Sarah continued, her voice carrying a note of forced cheerfulness that had become her default tone in recent months. "Make it a weekend trip like we used to do." "Can't. Too much work." David's response was automatic, delivered without warmth or even basic courtesy. He stood abruptly, grabbing his jacket from the back of his chair. "I'll be working late again tonight. Don't wait up." Sarah reached for him as he passed, hoping for some small gesture of affection, a quick hug, a peck on the cheek, anything that might bridge the growing chasm between them. But David sidestepped her touch, muttering something about traffic and being late for a meeting. The front door closed with a finality that echoed through the silent house. Sarah stood alone in the kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of another failed attempt at connection. As she began clearing the dishes, something white caught her eye on the floor near David's chair. She bent to pick it up, a business card that must have fallen from his jacket pocket. "Henderson and Associates, divorce attorneys," she read aloud, the words hitting her like a physical blow. Her hands trembled as she studied the card, noting the phone number written in David's familiar handwriting on the back. By noon, Sarah found herself in the familiar comfort of Chen's Diner, the local gathering place where Maggie Chen had served the best comfort food in Millbrook for over 15 years. The diner's red vinyl booths and checkered floor tiles had witnessed countless conversations about life, love and heartbreak, and today would be no different. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Honey," Maggie said, sliding into the booth across from Sarah. At 58, Maggie possessed the kind of no-nonsense wisdom that came from years of listening to people's troubles while serving them pie and coffee. Sarah placed the business card on the table between them. "I found this in David's pocket this morning." Maggie's expression darkened as she read the card. "That son of a—" She caught herself, glancing around the diner. "Sarah, I'm so sorry, but maybe it's not what you think. Maybe he's just exploring his options. 18 years of marriage, Maggie. 18 years. And he can't even talk to me about whatever's wrong." Sarah's voice broke slightly. "I know we've been having problems, but divorce. When did we get to the point where he'd rather talk to a lawyer than to me?" Maggie reached across the table and squeezed Sarah's hand. "You need to confront him about this directly. No more dancing around the issues. You deserve to know what's really going on." Sarah nodded, though the thought of that conversation filled her with dread. As Maggie got up to check on other customers, Sarah noticed the lottery machine near the diner's entrance, its bright lights advertising the current jackpot, $1,000. On impulse, she walked over and fed a dollar bill into the slot. The machine whirred to life, and Sarah found herself selecting numbers that held meaning in her life. 06 for June, their wedding month. 15 for the day they met. 23 for Emma's birthday. 08 for August, when they bought their first house. 31 for David's birthday, and 42 for her own age. As the ticket printed, she laughed bitterly. "Maybe this will solve all our problems," she muttered, tucking the ticket into her purse. That evening, Sarah sat in her living room, staring at the television as the lottery drawing began. The cheerful announcer's voice filled the room as the numbered balls tumbled in their chamber. Tonight's winning numbers are 06, 15, 23, 08, 31, and the final number is 42. Sarah's heart stopped. She pulled the ticket from her purse with shaking hands, checking and rechecking the numbers. They matched perfectly. every single one. She had just won $1 million. The front door opened as David returned home, his tie loosened and his expression grim. He carried an envelope in his hands, and Sarah could tell by his posture that this was the moment she had been dreading all day. "We need to talk," he said without preamble, settling into the chair across from her. The lottery ticket burned in Sarah's hand like a secret too dangerous to reveal. David placed the envelope on the coffee table between them. "I've filed for divorce, Sarah. I'm sorry. But this marriage has been dead for years, and it's time we both admitted it." Sarah stared at the envelope, her mind reeling between the shock of his announcement and the surreal reality of the lottery ticket hidden in her grip. "Dead for years?" she repeated. "David, we have problems, but we can work through them. We can try counseling or—" "No," he interrupted, his tone surprisingly gentle. "We've both been going through the motions. We're like strangers living in the same house. It's better for everyone if we just make this official and move on with our lives." Sarah opened the divorce papers with numb fingers, scanning the legal language that would dissolve their marriage. As David talked about dividing assets fairly and making the process as painless as possible, she wondered if she should tell him about the lottery win. But something in his demeanor, the way he seemed relieved, almost eager, made her hesitate. "I've already spoken to a lawyer about how to divide everything fairly," David continued. "The house, retirement accounts, savings, we'll split it all down the middle." The next morning at the Millbrook Public Library, where Sarah worked part-time organizing community programs, she tried to focus on her tasks, but found her mind wandering between the divorce papers and the lottery ticket that had remained her secret through a sleepless night. "You look terrible, dear," said Helen Morrison, the head librarian, as she approached Sarah's desk. Helen, a widow in her 60s, had become like a mother figure to Sarah over the years. "David filed for divorce yesterday," Sarah said quietly, needing to tell someone. Even if she couldn't reveal the full truth yet, Helen's face fell. "Oh, Sarah, I'm so sorry. Although—" She hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "What is it, Helen?" "Well, I probably shouldn't say anything, but I've seen David having lunch with Jessica Palmer several times recently. At Romano's downtown, they seemed quite familiar with each other." The words hit Sarah like a slap. Jessica Palmer was a 28-year-old claims adjuster from David's insurance office, blonde and vivacious in the way that made other women feel invisible by comparison. Sarah's stomach churned as she imagined David with someone so young, so different from herself. Her phone buzzed with a text from the Indiana Lottery Commission. "Congratulations! Please contact us within 48 hours to verify your winning ticket and arrange for prize-claiming procedures." That afternoon, Sarah found herself back at Chen's diner, this time carrying the weight of multiple secrets. Maggie took one look at her face and immediately closed the kitchen to give them privacy. "Tell me everything," Maggie said, settling in with 2 cups of coffee. Sarah spilled it all: the divorce papers, the lottery win, Helen's revelation about Jessica Palmer. Maggie's expressions shifted from sympathy to amazement to fury as the story unfolded. "That cheating bastard," Maggie said when Sarah finished. "And now you're sitting on $1 million lottery ticket. Sarah, you need to claim that money immediately and get yourself the best divorce lawyer in the state. But what if he's entitled to half? We're still married, technically. Honey, you bought that ticket the day before he served you papers. That has to count for something." As they talked, the diner's bell chimed, and Jessica Palmer walked in with 2 other women from town. She was laughing loudly about vacation plans and expensive restaurants, her voice carrying across the small space. "David has such wonderful ideas about where we should travel," Jessica was saying to her friends. "Paris in the spring, maybe the Caribbean this winter." Sarah felt her blood turn to ice. The casual way Jessica spoke about we and David's plans suggested their relationship was far more serious than a simple affair. Jessica noticed Sarah watching and, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, approached their table. "Sarah, what a surprise to see you here. I hope David mentioned that I've been helping him with some personal matters." Isn't it wonderful how things work out for the best sometimes? The implication in Jessica's words was clear. She knew about the divorce and was already positioning herself as David's future. Sarah managed a tight smile and a non-committal response. But inside, she was seething. That evening, Sarah found herself in the office of Robert Hayes, a divorce attorney recommended by Helen. Hayes, a man in his 50s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense approach, listened carefully as Sarah explained her situation. "The lottery winnings complicate things significantly," he said after reviewing her case. "In Indiana, assets acquired during marriage are generally considered marital property, regardless of who earned them. If you claim the ticket now, your husband could potentially be entitled to half, even though he filed for divorce first." "I'm afraid so. The timing is unfortunate. If you had won the lottery after the divorce was finalized, it would be yours alone. But since you're still legally married," he spread his hands apologetically, "what if I don't claim it right away? Lottery winnings become public record within 30 days of claiming. If your husband finds out through other means, it could look like you were trying to hide assets, which could hurt your case significantly." As Sarah left Hayes's office, her mind spinning with impossible choices, she spotted David's car parked outside Henderson and Associates across the street. The sight of it there, proof of his secret planning, filled her with a cold rage she had never experienced before. The next morning, Sarah drove to Indianapolis to the Indiana Lottery Commission office. She had decided that whatever the consequences, she wouldn't let fear keep her from claiming what was rightfully hers. The lottery office was surprisingly mundane, a sterile government building with fluorescent lights and tired-looking employees. Sarah was escorted to a small conference room where officials verified her ticket and explained the claiming process. "We typically issue a press release for winners of this size," the official explained. "It's great publicity for the lottery program. We can arrange for photos, interviews with local media." "I'd prefer to remain anonymous," Sarah said quickly. "We can delay publicity for a short time, but winners' names become public record within 30 days. It's state law." The official leaned forward conspiratorially. "I have to warn you, Mrs. Mitchell, many of our winners face unexpected financial pressures from family members once the news breaks. People can become very creative when they discover someone close to them has come into money." Sarah's phone buzzed with a voicemail as she left the lottery office. David's voice, uncharacteristically warm, filled her ear. "Sarah, I know yesterday was difficult, but I've been thinking about us, about our marriage. Could we talk tonight? I have something important to discuss about our future." That evening, David returned home carrying flowers, yellow roses, Sarah's favorites, which he hadn't bought for her in years. His demeanor was completely different from the cold, distant man who had served her divorce papers. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he said, placing the flowers in her hands. "Maybe I was too hasty yesterday. We've been together for 18 years. That has to count for something, right?" Sarah stared at the roses, confused by his sudden change of heart. "Yesterday you said our marriage was dead. I was angry, frustrated. But after sleeping on it, I realized we haven't really tried everything. What if we went to counseling? What if we took a trip together, just the two of us, and tried to reconnect?" For a moment, Sarah felt a flicker of the old hope she used to carry. This was the David she had fallen in love with. Attentive, romantic, willing to fight for their relationship. She almost told him about the lottery win, almost shared her secret in the spirit of this apparent reconciliation. "We could start fresh," David continued, sitting beside her on the sofa. "Build something better together. I know I've been distant, but I want to change that." They talked for over an hour, their first real conversation in months. David seemed genuinely interested in repairing their marriage, asking about her work at the library, remembering details about Emma's college plans, even laughing at her jokes. Sarah felt herself softening, beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back to each other. Then her phone rang. "Mrs. Mitchell, this is Tom Bradley from the Millbrook Gazette. We've received a tip about a local $1 million lottery winner, and we'd like to ask you a few questions." Sarah's blood froze. She glanced at David, who was watching her with sudden intensity. "I'm sorry. You must have the wrong person," she managed, ending the call quickly. "Who was that?" David asked, his voice carrying a note of suspicion that hadn't been there moments before. "Wrong number," Sarah lied. But she could see David wasn't convinced. The phone call had shattered the fragile peace between them. And Sarah realized someone at the lottery office must have leaked information despite the confidentiality she'd been promised. When David pressed her about her day, asking where she'd gone and what she'd done, she found herself confronting him about Jessica Palmer instead. "I know about the affair." David. His face went through a series of expressions: surprise, guilt, and finally resignation. "Sarah, I can explain. Helen saw you together. Multiple times. At Romano's, looking very cozy." David ran his hands through his hair, the romantic facade crumbling. "It's not what you think. Jessica and I, yes, we've been spending time together, but it didn't mean anything. It happened because our marriage was already falling apart. So you decided to shop for a replacement before you bothered to tell me there was a problem. That's not fair. You know we've been growing apart for years. I know you've been pulling away for years. I've been trying to hold us together." They argued in circles, David alternately apologetic and defensive, Sarah torn between hurt and anger. But something about the timing of his sudden change of heart nagged at her. Why tonight? Why the flowers and romantic talk right after that mysterious phone call about the lottery? David's phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at it, and Sarah caught a glimpse of the sender's name, Jessica. Without thinking, she grabbed the phone before David could stop her. The message read, "Did you ask her about the money yet? My source at the lottery office confirmed she won big." Sarah stared at the text, feeling the world shift beneath her feet. "Your source at the lottery office," she said, her voice deadly quiet. David's face went pale. "Sarah, I can explain. You knew about the lottery win before you came home with those flowers. It's not what it looks like. Jessica has a source at the lottery office. She told you I won money, and suddenly you want to reconcile." Sarah felt a terrible clarity washing over her. This whole evening, the flowers, the talk about starting fresh, it was all about the money. David's silence was confession enough. The next morning, Sarah met Maggie at the diner, feeling hollow and betrayed in ways she hadn't known were possible. The man she had loved for 18 years had tried to manipulate her into sharing a lottery win he had learned about through his mistress. Jessica's cousin works at the Lottery Commission. Maggie revealed after Sarah told her everything. Jennifer Palmer, in the records department. Word around town is that Jessica's been bragging about coming into money soon. So she had her cousin spy on lottery records. Found out I won and sent David in to play the loving husband. That about sums it up. Sarah, these people are ruthless. You need to protect yourself. As if summoned by their conversation, the diner door burst open, and David strode in with Jessica at his side. The entire diner fell silent as David marched over to their booth, his face flushed with anger. "We need to talk," he said loudly, causing every patron in the diner to turn and stare. "About the money you've been hiding from me." Sarah remained seated, her voice calm despite her racing heart. "I haven't been hiding anything, David. I won the lottery the day before you served me divorce papers. That money is mine." "We're still married," Jessica interjected, her voice sharp and demanding. "That makes it community property. David has a right to half of everything, does he?" Sarah asked, looking around the diner at the faces of people she had known for years. Neighbors, friends, people who had watched her marriage fall apart from a distance. "Does a cheating husband have a right to money earned by the wife he was planning to divorce?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Millbrook was a small town where everyone knew everyone's business, but Sarah had never been one to air her dirty laundry in public. Her sudden boldness surprised even herself. "You bought that ticket with marital funds," David said, his voice carrying a threatening edge. "I've already spoken to my lawyer about this." "Your lawyer? You mean the one you consulted before you ever told me our marriage was in trouble? Sarah stood up, facing him directly. Tell everyone here how long you've been planning this divorce, David. Tell them about the secret meetings with attorneys while I was still trying to save our marriage. David's face reddened. That's not tell them about Jessica. Tell them how your girlfriend's cousin at the lottery office gave you inside information about my winnings. The crowd turned to stare at Jessica, who had gone pale under their collective gaze. In a small town like Millbrook, reputation mattered, and being branded as a home wrecker and a schemer was social death. You can't prove any of that, Jessica said, but her voice lacked conviction.
Can't I?
Sarah pulled out her phone and opened the text message she had photographed the night before. David's phone received a text from you last night. Quote, did you ask her about the money yet? My source at the lottery office confirmed she won big. The diner erupted in whispers and shocked exclamations. Several people took out their own phones, clearly ready to spread this juicy bit of gossip throughout the town within hours. You went through my phone. David sputtered. You tried to con me out of my lottery winnings? Sarah replied evenly. I think we're past worrying about privacy. Just then, the diner door opened again and Robert Hayes walked in. Sarah's lawyer looked around the crowded room with professional composure before approaching their booth. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm glad I found you. I have some news that might interest you regarding your divorce case. David and Jessica exchanged worried glances. What kind of news? David demanded. Hayes opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. I've been doing some investigating into your financial situation, Mr. Mitchell, as is standard in divorce proceedings. I discovered several interesting discrepancies. The diner had gone completely silent now, everyone straining to hear what the lawyer would say next. It appears you've been moving money into accounts your wife didn't know about for the past 8 months, Hayes continued. Savings accounts, investment funds, even a small offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The total amount hidden from your wife is approximately $127,000. David's face went from red to white in seconds. You were just what? Planning for your post-divorce life with your girlfriend? Hayes smiled grimly. In Indiana, hiding marital assets is a serious offense. It not only affects asset division, but can also influence spousal support calculations. Sarah stared at her husband, this man she thought she knew. You've been stealing from our marriage for 8 months? It wasn't stealing, David said weakly. It was my money too. Money you hid while letting me worry about our finances, while I took on extra work at the library because you said we were struggling. Sarah's voice rose. Money you hid while planning to leave me with nothing. Hayes cleared his throat. Given this evidence of asset concealment, Mrs. Mitchell, you have significant leverage in your divorce proceedings. Your husband's claim to any portion of your lottery winnings becomes much more difficult to pursue. The crowd in the diner began to murmur again, and Sarah could see the judgment in their faces, not directed at her, but at David and Jessica. In a small town, betraying your spouse was bad enough, but financial deception and trying to steal a lottery win crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed. David looked around the diner, seeing the hostile faces of people who had known him for years. This is ridiculous. Sarah, can we please discuss this privately? Like you discussed divorce with me privately before filing papers? Sarah shook her head. No, David. You made this public when you walked in here demanding my money. Now everyone gets to know exactly who you really are. Jessica tugged at David's arm. Let's just go. This isn't worth it. But David wasn't finished. You think you're so innocent, Sarah? You've been cold and distant for years. You stopped trying to be a real wife long before I ever looked at another woman. A real wife. Sarah's voice was ice cold. You mean the wife who made your breakfast every morning while you ignored her? The wife who tried to plan romantic weekends while you worked late with your girlfriend? The wife who spent 18 years building a life with a man who was secretly planning to abandon her? The truth of Sarah's words resonated through the diner. Several women nodded in recognition, having watched Sarah's lonely struggles over the past year. Hayes stepped forward again. Mr. Mitchell, Given the evidence of financial fraud and asset concealment, I strongly advise you to consider an uncontested divorce with no claim to your wife's lottery winnings. The alternative could involve criminal charges for financial fraud. David's lawyer persona crumbled completely. He looked defeated, caught exposed in front of an entire town that had just witnessed his schemes unravel. Jessica was already backing toward the door, clearly wanting to distance herself from the public humiliation. "Fine," David said quietly. "Keep your money, Sarah. Keep everything. I just want out of this marriage." "Gladly," Sarah replied. As David and Jessica left the diner, followed by the whispered comments and judgmental stares of the crowd, Sarah felt a weight lifting from her shoulders that she hadn't even realized she was carrying. The man she had loved was gone, had been gone for a long time, and in his place had been a stranger who was willing to lie, cheat, and steal to get what he wanted. Maggie approached with a fresh cup of coffee and a slice of pie. "Well, that was quite a show," she said with a grin. "I think you handled that beautifully." "I can't believe I actually did that," Sarah said, her hands shaking slightly as the adrenaline began to wear off. "I've never been so public about my personal business." "Sometimes the truth needs witnesses," Hayes said, closing his briefcase. "I'll have the divorce papers drafted within the week." Given his public acknowledgement and the evidence of asset concealment, this should be straightforward. 6 months later, Sarah stood in front of the Millbrook Public Library, now expanded and renovated with new computers, comfortable reading areas, and a dedicated space for adult literacy programs. The renovation had been funded by her lottery winnings, an investment in the community that had supported her through the darkest period of her life. "Are you ready?" asked Mayor Patricia Wells, holding the ceremonial scissors for the ribbon cutting. Sarah nodded, looking out at the crowd of townspeople who had gathered for the reopening. Helen Morrison stood in the front row, beaming with pride. Maggie was there too, having closed the diner early to attend the ceremony. "This library expansion represents more than just new books and computers," Sarah said to the crowd. "It represents the power of community, the importance of supporting one another, and the belief that education can change lives. The literacy program we're launching today will help adults in our community gain the skills they need to build better futures for themselves and their families." As she cut the ribbon, the crowd applauded, and Sarah felt a sense of accomplishment she had never experienced before. The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago, David having left town with Jessica shortly after their public humiliation. Emma had been shocked by the divorce, but ultimately supportive, telling her mother she was proud of her for standing up for herself. Later that evening, Sarah sat in her newly decorated living room. She had redecorated everything after David moved out, claiming the space as her own. On the mantelpiece sat several framed items: her lottery ticket, her divorce decree, and a photograph from the library opening ceremony. The lottery win had certainly changed her life, but not in the ways she had initially imagined. The money had provided security and the ability to give back to her community. But the real transformation had been internal. She had discovered reserves of strength and courage she hadn't known she possessed. Her phone rang, interrupting her quiet reflection. It was Emma calling from college. "Mom, I saw the news coverage of the library opening online. I'm so proud of you. Thank you, sweetheart. How are classes going?" "Really well. But I wanted to ask you something. Are you happy? I mean, really happy?" Sarah looked around her peaceful home, thought about her satisfying work at the library, the respect she had earned in her community, and the sense of independence she had gained. "You know what, Emma? I really am. For the first time in years, I'm exactly where I want to be." As they talked about Emma's studies and her plans for the future, Sarah realized that winning the lottery had been the least important thing that had happened to her that day 6 months ago. The real prize had been discovering that she didn't need anyone else to validate her worth or determine her happiness. Sometimes the best winnings aren't monetary at all. They're the strength to stand up for yourself, the courage to demand better, and the wisdom to recognize that your own respect is worth more than anyone else's approval. Sarah Mitchell had learned that lesson the hard way, but she had learned it completely. The lottery ticket on her mantelpiece caught the lamplight, a reminder not of the money it had brought, but of the moment when everything in her life had changed, the moment she realized she was strong enough to claim what was rightfully hers, and brave enough to let go of what was dragging her down. In the end, that was worth far more than $1 million. Thank you for listening to this story until the end. If you enjoyed it, please support the channel, subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments so you don't miss the next episodes. See you in the next story.